I'm writing, my dear, just to
Yeah.
tell
All
you
before the pandemic.
things
So
that can
that's a perfect
help
lead into where I
you
want to start with you, which
remember
is
what the
how,
old
how did you
Ashby
survive that pandemic era,
whispered to
and how has it
me, and
influenced
it
the way that you do
wasn't
things today?
again to be
Well,
mine.
that's
I've
a great question. I
waited
mean,
till I
this
can
this
say
project obviously was the
no.
way that
I
we
hope
survived
I've
the
not
pandemic was
wasted
the
anything.
songbook session stuff.
Yeah.
We um we recorded all the 250 tunes, right? And we kind of did this as a weekly thing for everybody, but pretty much every week consistently for 25 weeks. We took a couple weeks off. But the idea was, we build community around it. We give people a place to come every Sunday virtually. And a community, we did a hang afterwards, like on Zoom, and we would often have somebody do a talk, you know, um, about the some sort of historical topic. So we would, get everybody together, we would do the concert, and then we'd all have a hang. And so I think that got us through it sort of like emotionally. And then also, of course, having people like supporting what we were doing got us through it financially. So that really helped, having those subscribers.
That's a lot of music. How long did it take for you to lay and put all that out?
Well, every week we basically, shed 10 tunes and prep them for the recording. And, a lot of it, obviously, we know a lot of music. We play a lot of tunes. This is what we do when we're playing bar and restaurant gigs and, concerts and stuff around New York. I've got all my, my bigger band stuff that we're playing arrangements, but, the bulk of our work is just we play a lot of tunes. And so I probably have about 1,000 tunes all in all in my repertoire that are, just either ready to go or oh it needs a little brush up but it's there, it's a lot of music. And so doing this gave us a reason to like brush up a lot of tunes and go, hey, let's really dig in and like let's find the sheet music to that tune.
Yeah.
Let's find oh, you know what, there's these really interesting changes in this that nobody actually plays because over the years the changes to tunes have kind of gotten dumbed down and sort of watered down into this sort of like set of stock jazz progressions. And it's actually like there's some really hip harmony in a lot of these tunes,
Yeah.
if you go back and dig for it. So,
The one thing that's different about what when we talked before is that we've entered this world of all kinds of weird things, fears and just things that are happening that are making life tense. And your bread and butter's live music. You put out music that makes people happy. How much of what you're doing, either in the studio or live, is a part of the way that you're thinking about getting people to escape a little bit, to have this jazz oasis to go to?
well, I think I mean, look, music has different roles in the world, right? Like sometimes music is its job is to make us think or to reflect. A lot of times it's just to make us feel something, and I think, this is a weird time in the world right now. It's coming out of the pandemic, there's a lot of political division in the world. And like, I think right now music definitely has an important role in like kind of giving people, I don't know, but helping people find some happiness and some joy in their lives and escape from all of that. So I think it's really important. And I kind of look at it as a gift to be able to go out and play music for people and hopefully take them away from whatever is troubling them for an hour or two or three or however long the gig is. And that's an important job we have in society. I think that maybe we don't always think about it that way because we're so focused as, as also human beings, in addition to being artists, it's like, where's the rent going to come from? How am I going to do this? What's it going to cost me to promote this or to do that or whatever, And it's important to focus on, I think, how it affects audiences and what that role is in the world. So.
And hopefully this time of year with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, it's going to be a respite. It's going to give people that joy. So before we get into Under the Mistletoe that came out on November 20th, I'm curious, take me back to your childhood, your beginnings. What were Christmas songs? Who were some cats, albums that were really getting you going?
Sure. Well, I listened to a lot of stuff as a kid. I mean, I think it was kind of all the holiday music. And I grew up, in the Episcopal Church, so it was a lot of church music. I did a lot of choral singing. And so my first exposure to most stuff was either, hearing it on the radio or or albums that my parents had, whether that was older stuff like like from the era of music that I do now, like Frank and Nat Cole and Bing and stuff like that. Um, or a lot of this traditional music, my exposure to it was through singing in choirs, and whether it was the religious stuff or my mom was a high school music teacher, so hearing these songs in choral arrangements and stuff. So I had a pretty, I guess, broad exposure to Christmas music early on. That's kind of a bread and butter time for high school choir directors.
For sure. So let me ask you this. The thing about making a Christmas album is that you have just a horn of plenty of songs to pick from. And
hmm
obviously you can do originals. There's so many ways to go. How did you approach it? What was your philosophy? What was your artistic approach going into it?
Sure. So, I think the idea was that I started with keep a little Christmas in your heart. And that was the first, this was, okay, so this was 2019 we put this out. So we did, so I wrote that in March of 2019, which is a weird time of year to be writing a Christmas song. But I figured, well, let's it just kind of the idea came and I said, well, it may not be the right time of year for writing Christmas songs, but I have this idea. And it just kind of took off from there. And I said, maybe I could do a whole Christmas album. I had done a Christmas EP in 2014, I think we put out A Little Love This Christmas, which was with a small band. And I was doing a lot of big band stuff after Ain't It Grand came out in 2018, and I said maybe we should do a big band Christmas album. And then I was like, wow, we could get strings and we could do the whole thing. And so I started writing, and I knocked out about 11 Christmas songs in 3 weeks in like March and April of 2019. And then I did a Kickstarter to raise the cash to do the record, and I wrote all the arrangements in about 2 months. So in addition to the 11 originals, I picked nine classics that don't get recorded as much, because it's like, I don't know. I mean, look, I love different people's renditions of White Christmas, but I wanted to give, there's not that many recordings of Jolly Old Saint Nicholas,
Uh-huh.
especially in a, territory 1930s style. So I wanted to do some things that were a little unusual. And then, we recorded it that summer and I kind of squeezed it out just under the wire for to get it out for that Christmas. And then, of course, the world closed down a few months later. So,
Yeah. Yeah, certainly did. So take me back to when you were a kid. What was one of your favorite Christmas memories or Christmas gifts that you got?
um, this is stupid, but do you remember Mr. Game Show?
Oh yeah.
The what I'm talking about, like the little robot game show
Oh yeah,
guy, the
totally.
board game. I just thought that was the cool. Did that come out like 1987 or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
But
yeah.
I just remember just the whole family sitting around and just mucking with that and just thinking it was the funniest, most ridiculous thing. And yeah, I definitely remember Mr. Game Show. I think it was Christmas 87 or 88. I would have been, 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah. Well, the 80s were horn of plenty for a lot of those things that would just pop up. I remember the racetrack the first time we got one of the cars going around, how cool I thought that was. And now
Oh,
how pedestrian it is,
yeah.
but it was super cool at that time.
Those
Yeah.
those were great. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing that's very marquee about what you do is you shine live. What are you doing for the holiday season? What's coming up for you? What's happening?
Sure. Well, I've got my big thing right now is on we're doing a repeal day party, and this is one we do every year. My friend Dawn runs this big event that's called the annual Repeal Day party, and this is celebrating the repeal of Prohibition, which was on December 5th of 1933. So every year, either on December 5th or the usually the closest Friday or Saturday to it, Dawn does this big party. This year, I've kind of taken over just the legworks of logistics because Don just had a kid, so he's a little tied up. But we're doing it a little bigger and better than years past since this is the 10th anniversary. So I've got a seven-piece band. It's a really nice lineup with John Kelso's on it and Will Anderson, Sam Chess, really good players. And we've moved it into Manhattan. It's been in Brooklyn in years past. So that's coming up on December 5th. Other than that, it's kind of mostly my regular gigs. I've got my Thursday nights at Festival Cafe, my Saturdays at Peck Slip Social, and then a few gigs at Winnie's Jazz Bar. I've been doing some stuff with them. And then in January we'll have the album release for volumes 1 and 2 of Songbook Sessions. So that's on the horizon as well in this kind of this winter and the coming months.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned prohibition because during the pandemic, and a musician had told me that Kansas City was open the longest, serving booze and having music than any other city. So when things closed down during the pandemic, we were one of the few because Tom Pendergast was here and all
Right.
of the liquor was flowing and things. We were the Paris of the Plains at that
Oh
point,
yeah.
which is
It's wide
wild to
open.
think. Yeah, yeah, 100%. So the one thing we learned during that pandemic is the best way to make sure that musicians get the money they deserve. Band camps popped up. There's been a lot of things. So with this album and all of the other albums that you have, what's the best way for people to dive in and support you and the band the best?
Sure. Well, I mean, it depends on what people's how they want to engage with music. I've learned a lot in the last few years, and to be honest, like, everybody wants to bag on the streaming stuff, but actually it can be really long-term valuable for musicians to have those followers on the streaming sites.
Yeah.
Um, you know, basically, I had it recently described by some bigwigs in the music industry, and they said, look, it used to be you'd put out an album, it would make money for 2 years, and then nobody would remember it existed. And it would, I mean, of course, it would be there, but it was a huge trail off. Now you put out an album, and it makes money well beyond when you die,
Yeah.
and, because there's this long tail on streaming because you get paid every time somebody streams something. So with that in mind, we have to eat today as well. So what I always tell people is if you really want to support artists, go buy the album on Bandcamp and then stream it on Spotify
Yeah.
or whatever service you like, Apple Music, YouTube, Tidal, all of the above. But that gives the artists the cash in hand to go, hey, now we have some money to make the next album.
Uh-huh.
And it also gives them that longer tail, the algorithmic benefit of like, look, more people are listening to this. We should play it for more people. The algorithm saying, oh, people like it. Let's help them get new fans. Let's introduce it to new people. So I think it's an interesting world because it's the streaming rates obviously don't pay off until you get to much bigger numbers than most jazz musicians have. But it's a balance and it's all about thinking long term, I guess, too. So
For sure. Well, Glenn, I've always been a huge fan of the work that you're doing. I'm so delighted to be able to have this album on my Christmas show that's going to come up. So thank you, man. It's so good to run into
thank
each
you.
other again in these post-pandemic times. So thank you, man. Best of luck with the release.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, you bet.